Well, listen to this. The Department of Justice has released a new batch of documents from the Epstein investigation. We're not forgetting about the Epstein files just because Trump invaded Iran. And they include something that is going to explode: sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump. Now, we've talked about these before, these are FBI 302 reports. 302 reports are official summaries written by an agent after interviewing a witness. In this particular case, they summarize 3 interviews that the FBI did with a woman who says she was sexually assaulted by Trump when she was a minor. Now, I want to just remind you, not everything that is in the files is more than an allegation. The files contain things which are merely allegations. But what's very interesting is that these were held back by the DOJ for a very long time, and now they are finally out. Now, according to the interview summaries, the woman told investigators that Jeffrey Epstein brought her to meet Trump sometime in the 80s when she was between 13 and 15. She alleges Trump sexually assaulted her during that encounter. The FBI summaries say she described the alleged assault in very graphic terms, and she said to investigators that she did attempt to fight back. She also told agents that she had 2 additional encounters with Donald Trump after the initial one, but when investigators asked her, tell us more about those, she reportedly stopped and said, I want to move on to some other topic. Now, agents later came back to that and they said, hey, we would like more information about your contacts with Donald Trump. And she said she doesn't know what the point would be if there was a good chance nothing would ever come of it, which is unfortunately something that is not that rare for victims to feel. What makes the story even weirder, again, is how these documents came out. Earlier this year, we've all been tracking it. The DOJ put out this massive tranche of Epstein files, and the interview summaries were missing. And reporters eventually noticed that there was this gap because a document list was given to attorneys for Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell, and it referenced 4 interviews with the same accuser, but only one had actually been released. So this exposed to reporters that, hey, there's some summaries here that are missing. The other 3 of the 4, one was released. The other 3 which were not released, the ones that include the Trump allegations, simply were missing from that tranche of files. So reporters flagged the discrepancy. DOJ said, oh, those were mistakenly classified and they were not in the first batch, and then they released them. Now, the DOJ also says that members of Congress are going to be able to look at unredacted versions of these documents. That's important. But the full picture, I believe, is still not really public, because journalists that are looking really closely at the Epstein files say that there's at least 37 pages tied to these 3 interviews that are missing. It includes investigative notes. What did the agents find in the process of their investigation of these claims? They show internal communications, which, this is theoretical. The internal communications between agents could expose that they were deliberately slow playing it or trying to get away from doing their full due diligence here because it was Donald Trump. We don't know. I'm not making that allegation. I'm saying if that happened, it would presumably be notable in these internal communication files. Now, I'm always reminding people, these allegations are not proven. The accuser has not been publicly identified. The White House, of course, says it's completely baseless, and also says that the alleged victim, the woman, is sadly disturbed and has a criminal history, which of course is interesting because that person's identity, that woman's identity, has not been publicly disclosed, which, if the White House is saying mentally disturbed, criminal record, it means they know who it is. The FBI summaries do reference arrests. They say that the woman was arrested as a minor, and maybe that's what the statement from the White House is referring to. Now, we have additional reporting from the Miami Herald from journalist Julie K. Brown, who has done a lot to expose the Epstein scandal and network in the first place, who says that the Justice Department officials who interviewed the woman considered her credible enough to interview her multiple times. And I think that that goes to show that these documents are a little bit different than some of the others. I told you about this document that says, oh, Trump was on a yacht in a little inlet off of Lake Michigan with Epstein and participated in killing a woman's baby or something like that. And we looked into it, and there are not multiple documents about that. The timing doesn't really make sense. There's questions as to whether the boats that Epstein would have would even fit in these inlets. Like, nothing about it really made sense, and there was no follow-up. This is different because the FBI determined we need to do multiple interviews with this person. So not proof here, okay? But investigators wouldn't typically do that unless they believe there is the potential for credibility here. The obvious question hanging over this entire story is what else is still in the files that we haven't seen? It doesn't mean it's about Trump, or it certainly doesn't mean it's proof of Trump doing anything in particular. But given that every single time we found more files, we found major allegations in the files that now came out, which were not originally released, it would be logical to say, what on earth is going on here?